Well, let's start by taking a quick journey back in time with me to 2006. That's the year that Phil Fernandez and I started Marketo. Back then, Netflix still mailed DVDs. The iPhone didn't exist yet when we started this. 2006 is closer to the Jimmy Carter administration and the death of Elvis Presley than it is to today. But that is the time when we started building the playbook that many of us use still today in our marketing, as well as the technology that we use to build it. But fast forward to 2025, I think both that marketing playbook and the technology we used are looking about as dated as those old brick phones and DVDs in the mail. So that's what I want to talk about today. I was the co-founder of Marketo. At that time, we, I think, helped to pioneer, that kind of traditional playbook, whether that's using content to generate leads, to nurture them over time and score them and pass them to sales at the right time. Over time, the playbook evolved to include outbound SDRs, even account-based strategies, to a degree. But the more CMOs I talk to, the more I'm hearing that this playbook isn't working anymore, and we need to evolve, and that's really the theme of today's presentation. Before I get into it, just a little bit more about me. In addition to co-founding Marketo, I'm also a dad. These are my kids. Fun fact one is that my son was born also in 2006, the month we started Marketo. So it's another indication for me of how old this stuff is, because he's now 19 and a half and a sophomore in college. The second fun fact is I have two teenagers. This was our vacation last winter where I could not get a single photo of these kids where they both smiled at the same time. Impossible. So the only decent photo I got the entire trip was this one, which, as you can see, I took candidly while they were taking their own selfie. Little fun tip for anybody with teenagers. But as a dad, it means I like dad jokes, so I'm going to throw some dad jokes into today's presentation, starting with this opener. When does a joke become a dad joke? Does anyone know the answer? It's when it becomes apparent. Okay, so before Marketo, or before 2006, I would say that marketing had a reputation problem. We were seen often as the group that threw the parties and made the color brochures and that kind of thing. We were seen as a cost center. Part of what was great about this new playbook that came along is that it helped marketing to earn a seat at the revenue table. By making everything highly measurable and quantitative, by doing reverse waterfalls, where we would say, well, to have this much pipeline, I need this many opportunities, which means I need this much MQLs, which means I need this many leads. Like all that math, sounded really good, and it helped marketing earn the seat at the revenue table, and it worked for a while. But as I alluded to, I think many of you are feeling this. It feels hard out there. And it feels hard out there for a variety of ways. We see it, things like SDRs, can't generate the same amount of pipeline per SDR that they used to. Or reps saying that they need more pipeline coverage. So rather than 3 to 5x, they now need 4 to 6x pipeline to kind of make the same goals. So marketing needs to generate more pipeline. At the same time, costs are going up. Apparently the average cost per click on Google went up 35% in the last 2 years. You can stack, I can give you statistic after statistic, but what it adds up together is that it's just feeling really hard for a lot of marketers out there to kind of generate their goals in their pipeline. And what I want to talk about really is, okay, why? Why is it feeling so hard? What are these fundamentals, that aren't working? And there are 4 main things that I want to talk about. What's wrong, I think, with the old playbook. The first one is that the traditional playbook treated marketing like a gumball machine. Those reverse waterfalls taught the CFOs and the board members and CEOs that, if we just put this many dollars into marketing, we can get this many MQLs out. I was a big victim of this back at Marketo, where, at the end of each month, if we, didn't have enough MQLs, we'd say, well, let's just hit the database again with another campaign, and generate a couple more MQLs. But the reality is, That's not the way marketing works, right? Think about, the last buying process that you might have involved with, that had 6 to 16 people who were researching over 9 months, mixing public content, dark social content, peer recommendations, as well as your website. Right? It's complex, right? It's nonlinear, right? A better model than a simple Gumball machine for marketing is a complex nonlinear system, which are well studied. These are things like the stock market, and the weather. And what complex nonlinear systems have in common is chaos theory, right? Things like sensitive dependence upon initial conditions, which means that they are non-predictable, means that you cannot actually tie an outcome to any particular one input. Trying to do so, is like the proverbial, tying, the hurricane in Japan started because of that one butterfly's flap in Brazil. Might have been, because that's what chaos theory says, but we can't know it. It's nonlinear, it's not predictable. And too much of the traditional playbook is built on these linear, predictable, simple machine assumptions. The second problem with the old playbook I call the tragedy of the commons. Right? And this is marketers and sales and SDRs, people's tendencies to use and jump on any tactic that works and to use it and then abuse it to the point where it no longer works. Right? We saw this with content marketing. We saw it with outbound emails. And I'm going to jump on ahead slide. And it's only going to get worse in the age of Gen AI, where we can now all produce even more content that looks personalized, at scale. The problem is buyers are hip to what we're doing here, right? They've learned that if they come to our website and they fill out the form, they're going to start getting emails and phone calls they don't want. They've learned how to tune out stuff that looks personalized but really isn't. They've learned how to opt out, right? They are doing their research increasingly anonymously, which means that we've lost the ability to track them, to score them, do all the things that we sort of traditionally like to do in the old playbook. And that's all a result of the tragedy of the commons, which makes all of these tactics no longer work as well. Quick dad joke break. So I love speaking in person because my audiences laugh at my dad jokes when I present in person, but not when I present online. The reason why is because it turns out I'm not remotely funny. So the third problem with the old playbook is that it really over-focused on highly measurable tactics and underinvested in brand and awareness, which is inherently returns over a longer period, less directly measurable, set of things. And this is a real problem because the way buying increasingly works today as these buyers are anonymous. I hope it's okay. I'm sharing a little 6 Sense data at a Demandbase event. But when it comes to content, we can all be friends. So their research shows that 81% of the time, by the time a buyer reaches out and says, hey, I'd like a meeting, I'd like a demo, they contact sales, 81% of the time, they already have established their shortlist with a preferred vendor, and 90+% of the time, that vendor wins the deal. This means that where buying is happening is among the 6 to 16 members of the buying committee, most of them who are not in your database, right, who you do not have permission or access to email them, right? It is happening before you're talking to them, right, as they form the buying committee and they negotiate amongst themselves to form their shortlist, right? If you are not on the top of that shortlist, you will not win the deal. So as marketers, our playbook is like, how do we influence them before we actually have the ability to reach them? And this is what brand is really all about. I'd like to remind everybody, brand is not your logos and your colors, right? Brand is emotion. Brand is the feeling that people have about you, and it's what people would say about you when you're not in the room. All right, so I like to say, what is the one thing that you want your audience to think and feel about your company? BMW performance, Volvo safety, Apple design. What's it for your company? Does every single person in your company know the answer to that? And would they say the same thing? Right? If you get that right, then a lot of the other branding things that come out of it kind of fall naturally, right? But if you don't, right, and you don't get the emotion piece, you're not speaking to the reptilian brain, you're speaking to the logical brain, and it's not going to come across. So the other part about brand is we've typically underinvested on a dollar size. I just was part of a benchmark survey which found that the average company is spending 70% of their budget on demand gen and 30% on brand, which is a little bit off from where sort of the best practice would be, according to Benet and Field, who did a study with LinkedIn, who says it's more like 54-46. Right? So brand is not just your dollars and your investments, it is the feelings, but there is a dollar investment component to all this. The last problem with the traditional playbook is that it was over-focused on short-term metrics. MQLs this month, this quarter. Emma Clayton likes to say we become pipeline-obsessed hamsters on the quarterly hamster wheel. And I think that's true. And the problem is the short-term focus, the relentless pursuit of MQLs and all these things right now, causes us to do things that are good for our short-term metrics, but bad for the customer experience in the long term. Back to what I did at Marketo. Don't have my deals, my number of MQLs at the end of the month. I hit the database again. I send them more stuff, right? When we gate content, right? That's good for us, so we can track it and we can contact them, but it's not good for the buyer. Nobody likes a gated content experience, and so on and such forth. So collectively, when we use these tactics that are good for us and not for them, over time we hurt our brand, we hurt our trust, we hurt the experience, and therefore decrease our ability to actually impact and deliver results with them over time. Okay, so that's the intro, the 4 problems with the old playbook. Dad joke break before I'll get into, okay, what do we need to do about this whole thing? This one's very apropos. So Kellogg's hired a new global CMO. You know what their number 1 job priority is? It's raising brand awareness. All right. So what do we need to do? And by the way, there's this thing called AI, which is affecting how all of us go to market. So we should take that into account. So these anonymous buyers that we're trying to reach, right? We got to build our brand. We got to build, and we really have to, more than anything else, drive 2 key emotions with them. One, we need them to be aware, just know who we are, brand availability and recall. More importantly, be aware that there's a problem that they may face that we might solve. And then second, we need them to trust us and ideally prefer and like us. Those are the emotions that we need to evoke to these anonymous buyers. Now, in the old Marketo days, we did that with content. I wrote all these definitive guides, these big, thick books that we would then print and mail to people or let them download it. And people would read these like 200-page ebooks. But that doesn't work anymore. Nobody's downloading these big ebooks anymore. And so we need something new. And the real problem that is coming our way is AI disintermediating our traditional marketing tactics. We're already seeing this with zero-click search and the rise of AEO over SEO, where people aren't coming to our website. But this is coming for your email inbox too. There's a tool already called Fixer, F-I-X-E-R, that people can put in their inbox, and it will auto-respond to emails and sort them into ones you can ignore and ones you need to pay attention to. And the ones you need to pay attention to, it drafts replies for you. So increasingly, our ability to reach these buyers through the traditional tactics are going to get disintermediated and blocked by AI agents, especially as people have, we start using buying agents and selling agents and all that kind of stuff. So there are really, I think, 3 key things that we should be trying to focus on to build brand and awareness in the age of AI. The first one is really a big bucket, but I put under the category of relationships. What I mean by relationships is when the cost to produce content goes to 0 and to personalize the content goes to 0, what's going to matter more to get the message across is the source of the content rather than the actual content itself. We see this in our news already, right? Some people trust different news sources. We are going to whitelist various sources and pay attention to those and not to others. So as marketers, how do we cultivate these trusted sources, whether that's through our partners, whether that's through building communities so that our customers and our prospects are talking to each other in a trusted way. Influencers have been an important part of BDC marketing, and they're coming for B2B, I think, because of this need for kind of trusted content. And lastly, you see a lot of startups investing in founder brand, which is, how do you make your own executives influencers that are trusted out there? If any of you follow me on LinkedIn, you may know, like, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm building a new startup. We're in stealth. But in the meantime, I'm trying to build founder brand so that when I do launch, I have an audience that trusts me and kind of wants to hear what I have to say. The second category of things that we can do to kind of build awareness and trust in the age of AI is human experiences. AI cannot summarize an experience. Chris Penn likes to say that would be like the fact, like a photograph of your vacation doesn't really summarize the feeling of your toes in the sand. So how do we invest in experiences like this, where we actually are bringing humans together? Other VIP experiences, for your customers, other ways to kind of create that emotional bond, that comes from humans interacting with other humans. I think that's increasingly an important part of marketing in the new age. As a quick side note, if anybody's really, really observant, I did use AI to make a bunch of these slides. You may notice this person has 6 toes. So you got to be careful about AI. I'm going to just fess up about that where appropriate. The last category I call craftsmanship. And craftsmanship is, I think, the fact that humans can see when something took a lot of work, right? And we can see it in art, right? We can also see it in marketing. And so this can apply to all aspects of your marketing, where you actually, as human, you put that extra effort in a way that will stand out and show to the buyer. I think one area you can do this is in content. And my favorite tactic for kind of content in this age of AI is producing original research. Because original research cannot be summarized by AI. It has to be sourced by AI. And obviously you can do surveys, but my favorite is when you can create original research that's based on the content that only your company can really do. Gong Labs does this great by producing insights like when should you swear on a phone call, and that kind of thing. So do you have any data that's proprietary to your company that you can use to produce proprietary insights that are unique and valuable to your ICP? So kind of getting near the end here, we're going to be using AI in our marketing, going forward. But we're going to use AI to do the things that are more operational and tactical. The things that right now take all sorts of time, like building lists and doing analysis and cleaning data, and all that kind of stuff. And the more AI can do that for us, the more as humans we can focus on these things that actually really stand out, that make a difference, like relationships and experiences and craftsmanship. As I like to say, if AI can do the ING in marketing, then we can all focus more on the market. Which is ironic. It means AI may actually make our marketing more human, not less over time. And in the end, I think this is really what revenue marketing should be all about. Revenue marketing should not be about MQLs. Revenue marketing should be about shaping the market and building a brand that's so strong, we're the one that buyers reach out to when they are ready to buy. Right? It's positioning that's so compelling that the competition's an afterthought and we win more deals, right? Our sales cycles are faster. Our brand equity is so strong that buyers retain and renew with us because they can't imagine not being part of our ecosystem in our orbit. Think about Harley Davidson. This is revenue marketing. This is what we as marketers need to aspire and move to kind of over time. I don't have time to talk about what this means for metrics. I apologize. But obviously we need to change our metrics in order to kind of live in this new world. And I'll just summarize with, this is a new era, right? Buyers don't want to buy, buyers are researching anonymously, AI is filtering our marketing, MQLs don't represent buying intent. We have to focus on the full revenue cycle. We need to personalize interactions, and this requires a new kind of marketing, a new kind of playbook that's built on AI-driven engagement, value over volume, and an account-based go-to-market. With that, I will wrap with one last dad joke, and thank you. So my company hired a new CFO, and I said, hey, bro, do you want to see the new marketing pamphlet? He replied, bro, sure. All right, thank you very much.